When we look at the general perception of trust in professions, it's clear that some fields struggle to gain the public's confidence. Now, if you are hoping to see politicians or used car salesmen on this list, this is the wrong video for you. So what professions do you trust the most? Let's take a look at some insights from some recent surveys and studies and kick it off at number 10. Scientists. Now, this is one that honestly really surprised me to be on the list. Not that there's anything wrong with scientists, it was just something I would never have thought of. But whether we understand it or not, science has an impact on our lives every single day. Smartphones, social media, microwaves, medication, and advances in treatments, preventions for diseases. Australia punches above our weight in the science field. With a population of only 0.3% of the world, we account for 3% of global scientific research, contributing with research strengths in health, medical sciences, agriculture, space science, and computer science. Finding a hole at number 9, dentists. Now, we may not necessarily like seeing them, but our teeth doctors rank very highly when it comes to us trusting them. For a lot of us, we stick with the same dentist or dental practice throughout our lives, entrusting them with a wide open mouth and sometimes having a nap in the chair while they take care of business.
Okay, Julia, come on.
What?
I don't feel comfortable talking about that.
Oh, Dale, come on. You know that I like to fool around.
Oops.
Mr. Anderton. Not in the office. This is bad. Bad, bad, bad.
It's a good thing we trust them highly for that reason alone. Australia has a well-developed and modern dental care system with both public and private practices and over 900 dental clinics around the country. Changing those dirty nappies at number 8, childcare or preschool carers. We drop our kids off in the morning and we pick them up again after work in the afternoon. You better hope we can trust our childcare workers to look after our little ones. Australians are also very fortunate to have government assistance when it comes to the cost of childcare. A subsidy is paid direct to the providers, which then reduces the cost paid by the parents depending upon the income level of the family in question. Not a bad offer when you consider just how expensive childcare can be. Moving on to number 7, primary school teachers. A primary school, for those of you in the US, is our term for elementary school. And it typically runs from kindergarten all the way up to year 6. Also different to the US, you'll find that the vast majority of both public and private primary schools wear school-specific uniforms. School activities are also big, and representing your school at various sports such as cricket, rugby or field hockey is highly encouraged. Primary school teachers all have a minimum of a 4-year bachelor's degree and cover a broad syllabus and curriculum including English, maths, science, arts and physical education. Unlike the schools in America, it is highly unusual for armed law enforcement or guards to be on any campus. If you're aware of a school in Australia that has armed guards, let me know. I'd be curious to see if this is now becoming a thing back home as well. Let's get those prescriptions filled at number 6 with pharmacists. You're feeling sick, but not quite sick enough to head to the doctor. Head off to your friendly local pharmacist, locally known as a chemist, and get something to help you feel better. That friendly smile, that knowing look, all contribute to a feeling of safety and trust when you're not feeling the best. Now, there are 4 major pharmacy chains in Australia: Chemist Warehouse, Terry White Chemmart, Priceline Pharmacies, and Amcom, which was rated as having the most satisfied customers in the country this year with 5-star reviews for checkout experience, store layout, and overall satisfaction. There are also many independently owned stores where the pharmacist, to many, becomes a lifelong trusted advisor. Incidentally, unlike the ones in the US, Australian pharmacies do not sell beer or cigarettes, which again to me is a good thing. Taking those temperatures at number 5, general practitioners. The GP, known as a PCP in the US or primary care physician, plays a hugely important role in the well-being of our communities, so it's no wonder that they get a high rating on the trust and ethics list. Australia has an ongoing shortage of GPs. With a growing and ageing population, it's a simple case of supply and demand. or is it? The number of doctors actually increased by 5% in 2023, which was in line with the population increase. What changed, though, was the number of hours that doctors have been working. There's been an historical trend of doctors working less. It gets even harder in rural areas of the country where a shortage of doctors has always been an issue. Australia is also home to the Royal Flying Doctors Service, and that's a non-profit service that provides emergency and healthcare services for those living in the country's vast rural and remote areas. Up next at number 4, veterinarians. For many people, their pets are their family, and it's for good reason that we hold vets in such high regard. Having the ability to know what a patient who can't verbally tell them what is wrong takes a special skill and patience as well. Dealing with a sick Rottweiler one minute and then an aging Prussian blue cat the next also means they need to be highly adaptable. The number of pets owned in Australia is increasing year after year, and the number of vets needed to care for them isn't expected to meet demand. There are more than 15,000 vets registered in Australia, and more than 47% of them are working outside of a capital city. Over 60% of Australian vets are female. Most are working in small animal practices, but some focus on larger animals too, like livestock and horses. Raising horses is big business down under, with around 1 million horses in the country. However, of the 15,000 vets, only 8% are equine specialists. An interesting stat to finish with, 25% of Australians have had a vet bill of at least $5,000 or more, me included. Lighting up number 3, we have the ambulance services. Now, if you've ever been in a situation where you've needed one of these guys in a hurry, you'll know how important of a role that the ambulance service plays in our lives. Australian ambulances are provided by both state governments and volunteer organisations such as St John Ambulances Australia. We also have air ambulances such as the Westpac Rescue Helicopter or the Life Flight Australia helicopter. My personal interactions with ambulance crews have always been professional and caring. The role that they play to make us feel safe, get us quickly and securely to hospital, or being on the sidelines at sporting events or local shows cannot be expressed high enough. We're turning on that big hose at number 2, and it's the fire services. Are you seeing a theme in the list of most trusted occupations? Those that we rely on in a crisis are the ones that we're thinking the most highly of. Fire services in Australia can be split between town brigades and the rural fire service. From putting out office fires in high-rises in the middle of the city, to rescuing car accident victims and then fighting Australia's horrendous bushfires every year, the men and women who don the fire services uniform rush into danger as a part of their daily routines to rescue those of us caught in harm's way. Australia's history of bushfires means a strong community involvement in this area is imperative to enable a greater coverage of service. Fire and life in Australia are an unfortunate marriage every year. We've reached the most trusted profession in Australia, and really it should come as no surprise that we find nurses as the most trusted and most ethical of all. Nurses and midwives form more than 54% of Australia's total health professionals and are a highly in-demand profession, with many making a living as travelling nurses, taking advantage of their advanced qualifications. This one is another female-dominated industry in Australia too, with 90% of employed nurses being women. Much of the reason for this comes down to cultural conditioning. In the 1970s, that number was closer to 97%. And whilst the gap has changed slightly, the stereotype of a female nurse appears strongly ingrained in Australian culture. And that's despite a remarkably low industry unemployment rate and really high starting wages. Catholic institutes were influential in the development of Australian nursing, with the Irish Sisters of Charity arriving in 1838, establishing St Vincent's Hospital in Sydney as a free hospital for the poor. Nowadays, there are around 450,000 nurses and midwives in Australia, making it the largest clinical workforce in the country, focused on the art and science of caring, protection, prevention, and compassion. So what do you think? Do you agree with these highly ethical and most trusted professions? Should there be something else on the list? Let me know in the comments below. In an era where trust seems to be in short supply, to me it's heartening. It's heartening to see that there are still professions that Australians trust implicitly. Thanks for joining me to keep an eye out for the top 10 least trusted professions video too. And I'll catch you next time on From Down Under to Down South. Hooroo, mateys.